Once you've mastered the foundation, I think you have to master content creation, branding, and marketing. I think you have to step into leadership, team building, systems, procedures, strategic planning, business owning, if you will, and CEOing. All right, chiropractors and chiropractic students, welcome to the Family Practice Podcast. You know, the one you've been waiting way too long for, because this podcast will actually stay focused on chiropractic, not only what it takes to get world-class clinical results for kids and families in your community, but also what it takes to build a legendary, incredible family practice that takes care of your family way beyond your dreams. I'm Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be joined by Dr. Matt Hill, Dr. Ellie Wright, Jackie Jacobowitz, and incredible guests, chiros, associates, CAs, all these folks making massive impact around the world. We're going to cover everything: pediatrics, perinatal, family practice. This is the podcast you've been waiting for, because moms and dads and families have always needed us. Now they're finally ready for us. I hope you're ready for the Family Practice Podcast. Let's go. All right, what is up out there, chiropractors, chiropractic students? Dr. Tony Ebel coming at you here. This podcast is totally different than anything and everything else you're going to hear in chiropractic, not just because we're going to be talking about pediatrics and taking care of pregnant moms and full families, but because we're truly going to center every single episode around these three things: you making more impact in your community and in this world. And that impact is generated by the second thing, which is unbelievable clinical results. Nothing matters more than getting sick kids well and keeping healthy kids thriving. And when you do that, you also get the third thing, which is you're going to grow and erupt your practice like never before. So if you want to add to your certainty, if you want to improve your clinical skill set, and if you want to grow your pediatric, prenatal, and family practice like crazy all the time, then every episode and everything we talk about, every interview, every solo episode, you name it. Now, this one is going to be a very foundational podcast episode, because the title for this one is What It Takes. Now, when we go through this, and I'll probably do this to a strong degree every single episode. When we go through this, I'm going to be teaching and talking from their perspective. What does it take for that child? What does it take for that mom and that dad and that family that is going to put the trust, put the care of their child's health in your hands? Think back for a second here. Just lean into this a little bit, chiropractors and chiropractic students. That's literally your job. That's your career when you choose pediatric and family practice. Parents are trusting you, physically putting the health of their child in your hands. Now, that is freaking a fantastic honor and responsibility, which means everything we're going to teach and talk about on this episode and throughout the podcast, you better take it serious, like real serious, 10x to 100x serious, more serious than the average chiropractor cracking backs and billing Blue Cross. This is a different conversation we're having here within all things PX and the PX podcast. And so when we go through this, we're always going to start with and stay with them in mind. Kids, families, their results, their life. But also, this is a For Chiropractors podcast. The other podcast, the Experience Miracles podcast, that is directly fully for parents about pediatric chiropractic. This one is also for you. And I think this is a crazy important also. I think this is a crazy important and. The other thing we want to do, in addition, we'll talk about your business. We'll talk about your practice. We'll talk about your results in practice. Is it growing as fast and as easy as you want it to, startups? Is it scaling and getting bigger and getting more efficient and impacting more kids and families in your community, but not taking more time away from your family and burning out your adrenals, practicing chiropractors? You are going to love this podcast, including this episode right here, What It Takes, because I'm going to teach you both at the same time. I'm going to teach you first what it takes to transform kids and families' lives through neurologically focused principled pediatric chiropractic, and we will continue from that conversation right into what it takes to grow a massive multi-million-dollar. In fact, we're just going to push the conversation to this vision of what would $100 million brand of pediatric chiropractic clinics look like? What would that truly look like? I'll tell you the truth right out of the gates. I'm your host here, Dr. Tony Ebel, and that's what I'm going for, okay? We're going for a full mission within PX and our entire network of PX docs that we train through the Pediatric Experience online and our in-person certificate and adjusting seminars with Life University. We are going all the way towards that goal. We are not just wanting to reach thousands of chiropractors and train you. We will be reaching millions of moms and telling them about you and sending them to you through pxdocs.com and the directory. So everything I'm about to take you through for you is that important for the mission and the vision that we are on. And we'll discuss that a little bit more in future episodes so you can see how all three of the P's in my life. So PWC is our local brick and mortar. Always have had the vision of building the Mayo Clinic of Pediatric Chiropractic. We use that analogy just because people are used to the Mayo and people fly from all over. But their results, we plan on getting better results because we got chiropractic, right? And they don't yet. And so we're going after that. And that's the brick and mortar practice outside of Chicago. And then we've got PX, which is training thousands of chiropractors to be the best clinically and also build the biggest, best practice. We're not choosing one thing. It's not just a clinical adjusting program. I don't want to minimize that. It starts there and then it goes to business, which is exactly this episode, what it takes. And then PX Docs is the parent-facing worldwide platform. And so know that about this episode. You're going to be trained on both clinically, what it takes for them, and then practically what it takes for you. This is a very practice-based. The content you're going to learn on this podcast, or if you're watching this over on YouTube. And by the way, if you're a YouTuber, meaning you love to learn on YouTube, and maybe you use YouTube to figure out how to hang your Christmas lights, or I don't know, people use YouTube for all sorts of instructional things. Well, this is actually really designed to be a teaching podcast, an instructional podcast. We're not just going to keep things 30,000 foot view and theorize on things. We're going to get you actionable strategies. And you'll see here in a few minutes when I start ripping into the real meat of this episode, I'm going to use the iPad to sketch out some visuals. So if you're listening to this on the podcast and you're driving, and when you hear us go through visuals, go over to YouTube. Find us, The Pediatric Experience, on YouTube, and I think you'll get a lot of extra value here and there from the crazy Dr. Tony sketches on an iPad as well. And that's probably my last promise, I should say, with this episode and every other one. Let's have some freaking fun, too, because that will be one of, if not the best outcome you could go for. I know people always write their goals. They're like, I want to see this many per week. I want to have this many new patients. I want to collect this much money and have a practice that's this size. Well, have you ever thought, I want to have a lot of freaking fun in my career. I want to be really fulfilled. I want to create so much impact in kids and families and just be a kid and have fun and deal with and get to care for families all day long. It's unbelievable. And I'll probably struggle. I think I am here a little bit right out of the gates. It's harder to contextualize the joy with which my life is every single day, the fun with which PX doctors who practice in this model get to experience. So the reason we called it the Pediatric Experience is we're going to lean on our experience to teach you the things that work. And by the way, oftentimes on this podcast, we'll get into stories and strategies that didn't work. So you can take that list and be like, all right, Tony said that's dumb. He did it, didn't work, not going to do it. There'll be a long list of those things. Maybe dedicated episodes to all the dumb stuff I did that I shouldn't have, so you shouldn't either. We'll have to work on that podcast title, but it'll be a good episode, okay? And it'll take more than one episode, by the way, to go through that list. And then it's the list of, man, this stuff works, so you should do this. So it's not just the business of the clinical experience, though. We really want this episode to be for you. We really want this podcast to be for you. And think about, man, I spent 8 years. I borrowed invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into getting this chiropractic education. I shouldn't just be impactful and successful by statistical standards, but what would it look like to have a freaking blast and live the most joyful, incredible life where people look at you like something's wrong with you. Why is that guy so happy? Is that why he got all the forehead wrinkles? So once again, you'd need to see YouTube for that. But yeah, because I've been smiling my whole freaking life being a pediatric chiropractor. So, all right, let's go. What does it take to succeed, to create impact? give me a minute on this to first define success in this podcast episode and the PX landscape. Now, do we define success solely as most chiropractic coaches, mentors, seminars, yada yada-ers do, where it's statistical? Look at how many I see. Look at how much I collected. Awesome. Love it. Not putting that down at all. But we define success by changing kids' lives. Okay? Lots of them would be preferred. So that would add up to massive stats for your practice. And our PX practices are high volume, high success because they're high impact. The way with which I'd love for you to always listen to this podcast uniquely differently than you would maybe from somebody else who you maybe put me in a similar category with. Oh, that's a mentor, teacher, coach, kind of advisor in that way. I just want you to know that my pecking order, my priority order, and anybody and everybody who gets their way onto this podcast will be exactly the same in this thing right here. We put our why first, our purpose first. This is not a profit first podcast. This is not a make $1 million and now you're awesome podcast. Save 1 million freaking kids' lives and you'll be the most awesome chiropractor I've ever heard of, okay? So we put them first, and then our outcomes, how many we see and how much we make and how much we collect and the life that our family gets to live, yeah, that's good. It's real freaking good and taken care of. So we also won't shy away. In fact, right at the end of this episode, I'm gonna push you to set really big goals numerically, financially with your practice, because that will represent and reflect the impact you make on kids and pregnant moms and families in your community if you do it right. All right. Anybody and everybody out there who's ever been taught by me, maybe your PX members listening in to further immerse yourself in this mission. I know many of you are. We love you. It's the greatest tribe in the world. And you'll pick up on every one of these episodes and just take yourself deeper and further with them as well. But if you've heard me at all, you know that I love to teach through frameworks that are not just maybe step 1, step 2, step 3, but I have, for whatever reason, a pretty deep obsession with making things start with the same letter. So when we teach subluxation through our PX program online and in the seminars, we create a 10D, teach a 10D model of subluxation. So dyskinesia, disaffectation, dysautonomia, and on down the way. It's the most advanced yet simple and easy and wildly certainty infusing model of subluxation, specifically for kids, because it talks about development, brain development, pediatrics, birth trauma, prenatal stress. So it's a very pediatric focused one. So it's the 10 Ds. Well, on this one, I actually didn't even do a head count of how many C words I have to teach from, but I have 2 chunks, categories, more C's of C's to go through. So the first one is going to be the foundational C's, okay? These are what every chiropractor, also starts with C, needs to have as a 10 out of 10. Like, you can't get into the game without the foundational C's. But what I really want you to glean from this episode, what I really want you to go, oh, dang, is the separator C's. So after I go through the foundational C's, which I'm going to go through fairly quickly on this episode so I can leave time for the separator C's, the differentiator C's. These are the ones that not altogether too many chiropractors step into, that they go and study, that they go and learn, and then they do. Because the only good studying, the only good learning, the only way that learning does any good for you and your community is if you instill that into action. So the reason PX quickly grew to the fastest chiropractic organization, especially in pediatric chiropractic, is because everything we teach is so implementable. We are not just theorizing or storytelling, or we're just teaching in a very actionable way. And that's the same here, okay? So first off, and we can actually, now is here, we're going to flip over, and if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to get a little visual to show these as well. So in the very beginning, I just want to show you that this first category, so the foundation of our what it takes pyramid, and I chose this simple little 3-tiered triangle and pyramid. It's kind of the hierarchy and the sequence of what it takes, because this is actually how we teach neurodevelopment inside of our clinical programs, and that with PX. So I think it's very similar in that way, just visual-wise. But here on the bottom, as it should be, those are the foundational 3 C's: certainty, communication, and clinical. Now, when we go into this and we talk about clinical, well, of course, we're talking about adjusting, but the truth of the matter is the best adjusting has to do with the best analysis or interpretation, case management skills, right? So when we in the land of PX talk about clinical, that is a whole beast in and of itself. And the challenge, if you want a pediatric, prenatal, and family practice, is how little clinical excellence, clinical care is taught at all in chiropractic schools or elsewhere. So you better believe that this is not just its own module. Heck, it's its own freaking organization, right? To teach you to be a clinical subluxation Jedi, subluxation slaying Jedi. And we do. Now, I am intentionally going to that first because as chiropractic students and as practicing chiropractors who maybe don't see kids yet, but you found this podcast and you're like, oh my gosh, maybe this is my path to finally get out of back pain, to finally get out of insurance and sciatica and frozen shoulder and decompression and osteophytic spines, foot dragging, foot dropping themselves all over your practice. I just had a vision of a bunch of old people with foot drop. That would be my nightmare practice, okay? Not that it's not great for chiropractic. Let me just disclaimer that one. You chiropractors who love geriatrics, you're not listening to this podcast, so I don't need to talk to you, but that's good that you're helping those people. That's not God's design for me, and those of you listening, probably not either. So anyways, clinical results matter most. All the other C's on here, as doctors of chiropractic, we can look at them and go, do they matter as much as adjusting? And it can feel blasphemous, and this is a real take-home point of this episode, it can feel blasphemous to say that they are, or even to imply that they are. And so what I'm about to do is not put clinical results down. Come on. Why do you think we have the biggest pediatric practice in the world? PWC is literally built, people always say on the backbone of, but that's a spinal model of an analogy. PWC is built on a central and autonomic nervous system of clinical results. And if you don't get that analogy or metaphor, I never know what the difference between a metaphor and analogy is, well then damn it, you got a lot of studying to do about pediatric chiropractic science, which takes us right over here. So certainty is our science and our philosophy studied and then understood at a deep level so that it gives you absolute conviction. And I know YouTube watchers how bad my handwriting is, but you do know you're learning from a doctor, so you probably shouldn't have expected great handwriting, right? So conviction, clarity, and the other thing I want to sneak in here and then expand upon for a minute is this word called courage. Now, pediatric chiropractic is the hottest market in all of healthcare. Notice for a second, I didn't say just chiropractic, okay? Pediatric nervous system focused. So when you are subluxation centered, you can actually take subluxation centered, subluxation focused, and you can slice that two ways. All other pediatric chiropractic organizations teach subluxation in a very spinal model or a very medical model if they talk about subluxation at all. So you have a lot of chiropractors that are still adjusting kids in a very spinal, structural, segmental model. And then you have a lot of chiropractors who have taken it too far. And it's all brain-based, primitive reflex. So they've turned it into medicine instead of chiropractic, okay? It's a therapy instead of care. And so what I want to talk about, though, is it being the hottest market because it's the greatest need and the greatest demand that parents have. Because chiropractors address the root cause, which is central nervous system dysfunction, subluxation, dysautonomia. Is it the microbiome or the gut-brain? Well, there's a brain-gut before the gut-brain. So stay tuned for some science-y episodes. But chiropractic is the profession, the science, the clinical protocol and art that actually gets to the root cause. Also, so parents love that, by the way. That's what they've always innately been searching for. They know the pediatrician medications ain't getting to the root cause, so they've always wanted a doctor. Whether they've verbalized it or not, intuitively, they've wanted you to be their child's doctor because you actually really get to the root cause. So all things natural are blowing up as medicine goes down in market share within families, and things natural are going up, but things neurological are blowing up. Check your Whoop, check your Garmin, check your Oura, check your Apple Watch. Nervous system stress-based health management is the hottest market right now as of recording this episode, and pediatric and family chiropractic done in the PX model just happens to be perfectly positioned on the forefront of that because it's chiropractic, because that's how chiropractic always has been. We've never really been about the spine. That's just our access point into the nervous system. Now, how did I get on that rant from the word courage? Well, to go that clear, To focus on something that much, nervous system focused family chiropractic, you need to study it and know it and understand it with that level of clarity. The moment you do, you have the courage and the conviction it takes to stand out from every other chiropractor. Because even most family, pediatric-ish chiropractors in your community are exactly that. They may have put family in their name, but just watch their behaviors because people's actions tell you what really is underneath the hood and not. It's not what they say. It's not what's on the website or what they post on social media. You can always get someone's real story by their actions, not their words. And so they may say we see kids, they may say we see families, but they talk about back pain, neck pain, they accept insurance, they do rehab. They think that the best strategy, so here's your business hat for a second, they think that the best practice building strategy, so I'm sneaking into CEO land just for a second, is to first start with adults, moms and dads. Go ahead and talk about their headache, their back pain, their neck pain. Go ahead and build their insurance. Go get them through a screening or a lunch and learn or a $19 Facebook ad. And then wait for it, everyone. They're going to come to your Tuesday night new patient orientation, and you're going to have a dry spine in one hand and a nerve chart in the other and some lame PowerPoint, and you're going to get the big idea over to these parents, and they're going to bring their kids in. They're going to understand the 33 principles. They're going to understand it's about the nervous system. They're going to get the big idea, get their kids adjusted, and do that for life. And that's what I was told. That was the strategy I was taught to get kids under care, and it worked like poop. Okay? Super poop. Because what you have as a first impression is your lasting impression. And so it takes courage to be a nervous system focused pediatric, prenatal, and family chiropractor, but it really just takes time to study and understand and build your certainty. So I know that a lot of you right now listening to this very piece of this podcast are thinking, I don't know how to adjust kids. I don't know how to communicate to moms and dads. You may not. That may be a very true thought that you've got to answer in your own ethical, moral way. I'm not a good pediatric adjuster. I'm not a good pediatric communicator. The reason you're not a good pediatric chiropractor or adjuster or communicator is because you don't have the depth of certainty that those who are do. Let me just rip through that one more time. It all starts with certainty. It starts there. It stays there. So really, if I was a better drawer here on the iPad, certainty wouldn't be up here with communication and clinical skill sets. Certainty, I'd flip this analogy from a friggin' pyramid to a tree, and certainty would be the roots. Communication and clinical, haven't talked about communication, that's up next, would be the roots of this what it takes tree, and then we would go on to the rest. Now, that's enough for today's episode on certainty, clarity, conviction, and courage, but that's what it takes to then talk to parents inside. And up next, we'll talk about branding and marketing and content creation outside, and that's what it takes to put a kid on an actual care plan. Because where chiropractors really wuss out with kids, care plans. 2 times a week for 6 weeks, maybe. They say that while peeing their pants because they don't have the conviction and clarity when they're giving their recommendations for a care plan. By the way, moms and dads especially can smell lack of certainty. Moms can smell lack of certainty a mile away. So the moment you wuss out on the care plan, you've lost them because they know you don't know. All right? And it all comes back to that. Now, what about this sucker in the middle? And why did I put it, if you're reading left to right, certainty, communication, clinical skill set? Because that's actually how it works, on the patient journey. Now, what I have found is that there's a lot of pediatric chiropractors out there who actually have studied birth trauma, prenatal distress, neurodevelopment, and they're really confident in, holy cow, subluxation does this to a child's life, therefore chiropractic does this. I can really impact these kids' life. They're pretty certain. They're pretty convicted. And I have a bunch of chiropractors I've met, pediatric and family chiropractors, who have taken a ton of pediatric courses. They might have a certification or even a diplomate, and they know how to adjust, and they do it well, but they don't have a big, thriving pediatric and family practice because they can't communicate. This was my problem. I got 2 different certifications within the supposed umbrella of pediatric chiropractic. Not only did they teach me a ton of non-chiropractic stuff and take me off course, primitive reflexes, nutrition, yada, yada, but they also never, not once, taught me how to care plan and never not once taught me how to actually communicate. There was no communication training. If I were to ever, and do not remember this part of the podcast because I'm not going to do it, but I might do it down the road. I don't know. We'll see. Start my own chiropractic school. You better believe that 50% or more, maybe, just to really push this very needed strategy, 50% of the curriculum would be communication training, because then we would take that communication and we would move up. So now here, the top 2/3, these are the separator C's. Okay, so that is where you are going to be in a league of your own if you step into these. And so finishing off this podcast with going deep into content creation, which is branding and marketing in today's world. And your reason I chose content creation because it starts with C's, and that's actually how branding and marketing is done. So in today's world, marketing is digital. Can you still go out and join BNI and the chamber and go meet other businesses, PTs, OTs, and do the Perfect Storm or Raising Healthy Kids workshop at their practice? Can you old school market your practice? Yes. You'd be nuts not to. Community involvement, community engagement. Get your boots on the ground, go meet people, kiss, shake hands, kiss babies, give talks, get kids and families in the door through those old school ways. Yeah, very successful way of marketing and building your practice. But now we're shifting into kind of these business practice-based elements that will really impact kids and families at a higher level, because few chiropractors become content creative experts, branding and marketing bosses, and then CEO leaders. But those that do grow the biggest practices possible. Those that do are not only, so if you're still with us on YouTube, a 1X, meaning right now, for whatever reason, the highest goal, like this still, it's insane, right? Because there's billion-dollar businesses selling freaking all sorts of stuff that has way less value in people's lives than chiropractic. But for whatever reason, this profession continues to set the bar at a $1 million practice, singular, solo, $1 million. Okay? Now, I'm not putting that down either. A lot of these podcasts are going to have a lot of contrast, and I'm not meaning to put things down. But if we continue to say that the $1 million practice is the high watermark, then we're going to continue to perpetuate this problem. Because chiropractors who get there, actually, tons of them who don't even get to a 7-figure practice, all of a sudden, instead of continuing to scale their practice to $10 million, $100 million, and impacting that many more lives with chiropractic, become a chiropractic coach. It's just how it goes. Hey, I'm seeing 300 a week. Let me tell you how great I am through my coaching program for $3,000 a month, right? We got as many coaches as we do. We probably have more chiropractic coaches in this profession than we have people with actual $1 million practices. And the truth is, once you get to $1 million, well, you figured some things out with content creation, branding, marketing, and CEOing, which is your systems and your procedures and leadership. I'll dissect that just a bit more here before we wrap up. But what if you were going for 10 million? What if you were going for $100 million worth of impact on kids and families? Well, truth is, everybody, having certainty, having a high ability to communicate and connect and convert patients under care, and then having a real high level of clinical skill set and protocols that not only you could deploy, but other doctors on your team could deploy. Well, those are foundational elements you would need to start with to even have a prayer and a dream of getting to a $10 million or $100 million brand with your practice. And you may be thinking, I don't even want a $10 million. I don't even want a $100 million. I'm a small town. I want to see kids and families, and I want to go golfing, and I want to go fishing. All right, well, that's you. What if there's 10 of you on your team? I could all have that. 10 is a lot more than 1. And so you'd have a much better chance than 10 to or 100 million. And so even if you just think in this way, your ability to get to the first goalpost of $1 million is going to be so much more likely to be achieved. If you actually shoot for the stars, you're not going to be so ticked when you land on the moon. And that might be another analogy or metaphor that I butchered. I probably will use copious amounts of metaphors and analogies on this. I'm going to use a ton of analogies and metaphors because the best teachers use analogies and metaphors. They aren't all going to be accurate though, but I have a lot of conviction and clarity and courage in my long library of those. But that's always the one when I say it, shoot for the moon, land. I'm like, wait a minute, where would I rather be? On the moon? I mean, what really would I do up there at all? I'm not Elon Musk. I don't know why the hell we'd even go up there. But anyways, take that analogy and run with it, because what it says is the bigger you shoot your target, Even if you fall a little bit short, you're not going to be that ticked. But if you set a small target and then don't achieve the small target, well, you've got less than small and you're going to be salty, all right? So let's finish this one up. The truth of the matter is content creation and being a high-level leader and business owner separates those. Now, the problem with this, the quick little asterisk I got to put on this that's really, really tricky is I have met a lot of chiropractors who did go so in love with branding and marketing and CEOing that they actually skipped being a good adjuster. I can't even tell you how many chiropractors, and actually I want to finish with this point because of what I want to show you, and the reason I spent so much more time on the foundation, and we're finishing with the separator Cs, the differentiating Cs, is because I want to show you the value of them through this story right here. I have gone to many seminars, right? I've been speaking in this profession and on stages, yada yadas, for 10 years. And you supposedly, and I say supposedly then, you're up there with the biggest of fish, right? They got a big clinic over here. She's got a big clinic over there. He's got a big clinic over there. And bam, by statistical analysis, you make an assumption right there, right? You're not supposed to assume. You make an assumption. This is a world-class chiropractor. So in my early years of traveling and going these stages and meeting everyone, I would be like, I can't wait to get adjusted by him. I can't wait to get adjusted by her. They got $1 million clinic. They must be a world-class adjuster. And a lot of the time, and I wish it was none of the time, and I wish this story I was about to finish this podcast episode with would be like only a little bit of the time, I get very disappointed by the adjustments I receive from these people. Oh no, it's way more often than it should be where I get adjusted by people who grew high volume practices. And I'm like, that's what's up. That just happened to me. Okay, all right. And so why am I doing this? Why am I finishing this episode with that? But they know something. They know that studying, and they did, studying, training, and dominating communication, content creation. So in today's world, that's killing it on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. If you're not digital, you're not going to be dominant. You can write that one down. That's just how that works. So these practitioners, these chiropractors have figured out that they fell in love with running a business and building a team and leadership and content and marketing and systems and procedures. And that stuff works. And that's the last part. So you can almost kind of see that this episode is almost 2 episodes in one. It's a very chiropractic, clinical, foundational episode. You do not pass go, right? You shouldn't, in my opinion. I didn't study marketing. I didn't study branding, and I didn't learn to be a leader and a systems and procedure. I am really good at leadership. I am really good at creating content and communication and branding and marketing. And our systems and our procedures are the most efficient and organized out there. I'm a great strategic planner. I don't like talking about myself, but that was a long list of some stuff that's pretty good on my resume today. It's only good on my resume today because I spent years and years getting mentored and trained and then getting into action on clinical results. At our practice, kids from all over the world fly here for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. Well, they generally don't fly themselves. Their parents get them here, drive them here, however they get here. They are coming to us. Is our brand big and loud? And did they hear about us from that? Yeah. Are our systems wonderful? They sure are. Okay, love you, Sked. Love you, everything out there that helps us do that. But what is different is our level of clinical results, our level of conviction with our expected ability to experience miracles. So the pediatric experience, the entire focus is to generate miracles. So the reason that I personally have spent and do continue to spend so much time learning how to do this, make content, the reason we have a podcast for parents, the reason we have YouTube for parents, and we have the biggest, best Instagram and Facebook pages in all of pediatric chiropractic for parents is because we know when we generate that content, we generate an opportunity and a chance to transform that child's life and that family's life. And we are so confident in our clinical ability to do so that it actually becomes a moral responsibility. So what I really wanted to finish with this What It Takes episode is that I actually think chiropractors also have to live a different life. Once you've mastered the foundation, I think you have to master content creation, branding, and marketing. I think you have to step into leadership, team building, systems, procedures, strategic planning, business owning, if you will, and CEOing. I love these other two C's, the content creation and the CEO responsibilities. I love that I have to. I love that I get to, because I know that when I do, more and more and more kids and families are going to find out about principled, neurologically focused chiropractic. More and more families are going to get under principled, neurologically focused chiropractic, either in our clinic or in one of the thousands of PX offices that I trust, because I trained them and our team trained them. And so what you need to do from this episode, so at the end of every episode, we will send you with a CTA, a call to action. And that call to action, like I introed this podcast episode and everyone with it will, that call to action has a very intentional design, a very intentional purpose coming from me through you to them. This is different. I hope that this podcast changes your life. I hope that this podcast gets you into the PX membership. I hope that this podcast gets you to sign up for our adjusting seminar. I hope that this podcast gets you to our website and the Pain to Pediatrics playbook, where you convert your practice from pain and insurance to this model. I hope that the startup playbook, I hope that a webinar we have, I hope something we have helps you massively as a chiropractor, for you, for your practice, for your volume, for your collections, for your family. Goodness, I plan on that. But the plan, the actual plan, is to have this podcast go through you for them and to them. So the action I need you to take, the action they need you to take in your community is this. Where do you suck the most? Don't worry, I was very inspirational and emotional with that closing, right? And now we're right back to Tony's a farmer from Iowa, and I'm not going to complicate this for you, because if I complicate it, you don't take action and kids' lives don't get transformed. So here's the take-home action. You need to go through this list: your certainty, your communication, your clinical skill set, your content creation, and your CEOing. So we'll leave it for 5. Certainty, that's science, really knowing what you know that you know that you know. Communication, can you get a mom converted? If you get into a conversation, if you get that chance, coffee shop, or even better, she's sitting across from you day one because you already adjusted her, can you communicate at a high enough level to convert her family under care? Clinical, let's say that works. That conversation works. Do you have your confidence in your care planning, your analysis, your neurologically focused neurotonal pediatric adjusting? Hey, did you get them in the door in the first place? Content creation, marketing. Do you suck there? Do you have no clue what you're doing? And then maybe you're crushing all 4 of those, and now you're really busy, and you're like, I think I need to figure out how to be a really successful CEO. Really, my position is CVO on the team, Chief Visionary Officer. And then I actually have a CEO for each company who does the execution and the systems. And I have a CMO who does marketing. And we have a COO, Dr. Matt, who crushes operations for us. So where do you suck the most right now? Write that down, or burn it into your prefrontal cortex if you're driving or crushing the treadmill right now, okay? That's your first action step. And then your second, so that's 1A. 1B is, where am I going to go and get trained and get resources and get educated and find a guide, find a teacher, find a coach, whatever you want to call the person who's going to help you do this. Where do you need to go next right now to fix that big subluxation that you have? For many of you, it is certainty. You need to start there. We all need to start there and stay there. But for many of you, this group over here, it's going to be communication. This group over here, it's going to be adjusting. This group over here, it's going to be content creation and marketing and social media. And you need help from PX for that. Whatever it is, we've got it. So that's the final good news I can leave you with. So subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Apple, Apple iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're listening this to. Share the heck out of this thing. Link this podcast, link this YouTube on your Instagram stories. I know it takes a little bit of time, a couple of thumbs in there, put a little screenshot, put the link in there, put your little insights in there. Please, let's find more chiropractors. Let's train more chiropractors to be certain, to be skilled, and to grow their practice to create that level of impact together through this PX podcast. And take the action today to find the action you need to take to fill that gap. Wherever you are struggling the most on these C's of what it takes, that's your next action step. You need help? All you got to do is send us a DM, Facebook, Instagram, The Pediatric Experience on both of those right here on YouTube. Drop a comment below. We are not hard to find. Google's still kicking butt, and it'll generate and show us when you search anything Dr. Tony Ebel and The Pediatric Experience. Ask us for help, and we will help you help them. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of the Pediatric Experience Podcast. Remember, we're going to teach you how to get insane clinical results. We're going to teach you how to grow your practice. We're going to pull analogies and metaphors from farmers and science, and we're going to throw some dad jokes. You're going to have a dang good time. Oh, and I think I swore once. I promise I'm going to cut that back. We'll make this a family-friendly show. Should I have made that promise on a foundational episode? I'm going to do my best. That's what I'm going to promise you at the end of this one. I love you because you love chiropractic. You love taking care of kids. I'll see you on the next episode. Hey, Dr. Tony here, and I wanted to say thank you for listening to the Family Practice Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a thing. Also, if you're looking for more content from us, you can absolutely subscribe to our newsletter, watch exclusive episodes on YouTube, and dive deep into the articles and blogs on our website. All of this is linked in today's show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode.